Creativity podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Clint Arthur, Pulitzer Prize nominated author of 21 best-selling books. Please enjoy Clint Arthur. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Clint Arthur, Pulitzer Prize nominated author. Welcome to the podcast.
Muchas gracias. So great to be with you. I'm really super excited because sustaining creativity is not something that I was really able to do twice. I actually quit writing 2 times in my life.
Oh my goodness.
Right after I got out of college, I quit writing. When my creative writing teacher in college, never commented or responded to the novel that I wrote and sent him.
Oh.
And I was like, so crestfallen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I even writing? And then I started again a few years later when I decided that I wanted to be a screenwriter and a movie star. You know, I needed to write my own movie so I could be the filmmaker and movie star of my own movie. And I wrote 30 screenplays over 13 years and 10 books. And I was published by Penguin USA. My book was the big book of the summer for 1995 for Penguin USA. And that's when I started driving a taxi. And I drove a taxi for the next 6 years as I went in from year 7 through 13 of my 13 years of chasing the Hollywood dream. And at the end of that, I said, this is not worth it. All my fraternity brothers are becoming millionaires and billionaires. Really, I know of at least 2 billion. I know of at least 3 billionaires who are fraternity brothers of mine. And that's when I quit writing the second time, 2001.
Well, we're here to chat about sustaining creativity and creativity. So I can't wait to dive into all of that. But if you could share a little bit more about what you do now so our listeners know where you're coming from.
Now I make millions of dollars a year as an author and a speaker and a coach.
Perfect.
And consultant, all on the back of my books.
Nice.
Okay. And I've written 21 best-selling books at this point. And my latest book, Wisdom of the Men, was a true labor of love and the most challenging, daunting, creative thing I've ever done in my life. It took me 7 years before I got up the courage to start writing that book. And then when I wrote that book, it took me 10 days.
Oh my gosh. What gave you the courage to write the book?
Venice, Italy.
Venice, Italy.
I had never been to Venice, Italy before. Have you?
I have.
This the city that rises up out of the water, the most ingenious, creative, astounding, mind-boggling city I've ever been to in my life. I love it. The architecture is so beautiful and inspiring. And my wife and I hosted a conference at Carnegie Hall in 2019. It was called Living Legends of Entrepreneurial Marketing, featuring Martha Stewart, IceT, and his beautiful wife, Coco. Jerry from Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. Michael Gerber, who wrote The E-Myth, big entrepreneurial book.
Yeah.
The editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer and other magazines, and several other notables and me. And after that conference was over, I took my wife on a celebratory tour of Europe. And we started out in Paris and then we went to Venice. And when I arrived in Venice for the first time in a water taxi, and we went up the Grand Canal for the first time, I was so inspired by the insanity and gorgeousness of Venice, Italy, that I said to my wife, if I could get back here for enough time, I could write I could finally write Wisdom of the Men. I could rise up to it because I'm so inspired by this place. And it took almost 2 years to be able to return because of the health events going on in the world.
Yeah.
But as soon as I could get back there, that was July. It's past July. We went there and we checked into a hotel on points. Thank you, Marriott, lifetime titanium member. And they gave me a beautiful suite. And I walked around the streets and alleyways of Venice, Italy, dictating into my phone. And I wrote some of it in my beautiful suite at the Daniele Hotel. And after 10 days of talking, I had all the chapters of my book.
I love it.
All dictated out. And then I uploaded it to Zoom, and that transcribed it for me. And I sent it to my editorial team, and they started putting it into shape for me to do my actual edit of the book.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love hearing those stories. I think they're so important to know someone's process and experience. And when you think of creativity and being creative, what does it mean to you to be creative?
When I finished writing the book, it was about 7 o'clock in the morning. And I was looking over the canals, the Grand Canal, and I thought to myself, is that it? Did I really create a masterpiece? Did I really do justice to this grand project that took me more than 7 years from conception to completion? And then I thought, I've been writing since I'm 16 years old with Frank McCourt at Stuyvesant High School. He won the Pulitzer Prize. He influenced all of us, inspired all of us to want to be writers. I have been mentored by Academy Award winners, Oprah Winfrey. I've written so many books. I did everything I could. I let it all come out. I gave it all of my truth. I did my best. I had practiced and rehearsed because I speak the words that get written down. I had told these stories over and over and over to perfect them. I had rehearsed them, edited them, perfected them in my mind and in my speaking over years and years and years. To be creative for me is to trust myself, to speak my truth.
Nice.
That's where I'm at in my life and in my career as a writer.
Yeah, it really sounds like there's so much authenticity that you show up with and share.
That's the only way I can do it and know that it's going to be real. I don't write for anyone else.
Yeah.
I don't try to figure out what somebody wants to hear. I don't care what anyone wants to hear. I only want to be authentically creative to me. And that's why I love writing books so much, because nobody is telling me anything. Or as my old dad used to say, nobody's telling me bupkis.
That's such a great word. I love it. That's fantastic. Well, I imagine having written 21 best-selling books, they haven't all come easily. You've navigated some creative challenges, maybe not in writing, but in other avenues of your life as well. What are some of the challenges that you've faced, and how do you face them?
Most of my books do come much more easily. I'm a professional writer.
Yeah.
I've been writing for more than 40 years. When I sit down to write, when I stand up to write or dictate or talk, I know what I'm going to say. And it's really a question of, or usually I know what I'm going to say. There have been very, very few books, but one of my most successful books was a book about the performance secrets of Donald Trump. And I know he's a controversial person, but it's not a political book. It's a book that analyzes what makes him successful as a speaker. And I didn't know what I was going to write in that book. I just knew that the anagram was going to give me the names of the chapters. Secrets of Donald Trump. Okay. Just spelled it out down the page and started making up words. And then each word was a chapter, right? Secrets, status language. That was a whole chapter on the language that he uses is what I call high status language. And I didn't know what I was going to say. I was making that up as I went. But that book is, even though it was one of my most successful books, that book is not as awesome as Wisdom of the Men, which is entirely story, because that book was like an analytical book, analyzing what another person does. And what I've learned over these years, and it took me a long, long time. It took me until my previous book to this one, Celebrity Entrepreneurship. I figured out finally, I mean, you know, this is the thing. It's like, I'm 56 years old now, and I finally figured it out like 2018, that all writing should just be stories. If you can't do it in stories, then you're not doing your job as a writer of fiction or nonfiction. It's all got to be stories, or else people are not interested in, they're not interested in information. They only want to hear a story and be entertained. And if you can teach them while you're entertaining them, good. At the very least, it's got to be a story. And it took me all this time, all these many years to figure that out. But I got it figured out.
It's super helpful to have it figured out. It sounds like when challenges come up, you really trust yourself that something will happen or something will come up in the process.
This is the difficult thing. I chased the Hollywood dream for 13 years. I wrote 30 screenplays. I heard my daughter's mother was George Clooney's agent for 10 years. And we went out on a date early in our relationship to a bar in West Hollywood called Dan Tana's. And we walk in the bar and she goes, "Oh, look, there's George Clooney. Let's go say hello." We walk over to George Clooney. She goes, "Hey, George, how you doing?" He goes, "Oh, Sarah, I am so effing wasted right now." He didn't say effing. He said the actual word that I'm not saying. And then she goes, "Wow, well, congratulations on ER." ER had just come out. He was the hottest show. He was the hottest thing in Hollywood at that time. He had tattoos all over his neck because he was filming From Dusk Till Dawn for Quentin Tarantino. He introduces us. He goes, "This is so-and-so, some tall glass of water, gorgeous supermodel that he was with." My daughter's mother, who was just at my date that night, says, "This is Clint Arthur." We shake hands. Then the maitre d' says, "Your table is ready." We go sit down. I go, "How do you know George Clooney?" She goes, "Well, I used to be his agent for 10 years. And I used to date him and his best friend at the same time. And silly me, I got engaged to his best friend." And I knew he was always going to be George Clooney. And he knew he was always going to be George Clooney. But the only people who didn't know he was going to be George Clooney was Hollywood. So if you look at his IMDb resume, it's basically all the stuff that he's done, all the TV shows and movies. You'll see he did pilot after pilot after pilot. He was a series regular on show after show after show that got canceled. 10 years. And then she said the magic words, "See, but it takes 10 years to make it in Hollywood." And now that he's put in his dues for 10 years, now he's George Clooney, and everyone knows that he's George Clooney. See, so as 10 years came around, I figured I was about to hit it. And then 11 years came, and then 12 years came, and I'm still hanging in there thinking, well, I'll just keep driving this cab. I'm going to hit it. I'm overdue. 13 years came, and that's when I said, I can't keep doing this, throwing my life away, chasing this dream that's never going to happen. And that's when I quit writing the second time. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not really sure. I knew I was going someplace that was correct.
Yeah. I mean, my comment had been that you trust yourself that whatever comes will.
I had to learn to trust myself again, because after
Mhm.
chasing the dream for 13 years,
Yeah.
I had lost the trust in myself because
Mm.
for the first time in my life,
Yeah.
I had really failed and screwed up everything. And I was terrified that I was never going to be able to dig myself out of the ditch that I had
Right.
dug for my life. And I had to learn how to be successful again. I had to start succeeding at little things and learn to trust myself. And I remember, I got out of taxi driving and got into selling gourmet food.
Ooh.
And then when I started making some money, I met a beautiful woman who, luckily for me, loved me for me and believed in me more than I even believed in myself. And she suggested we get into real estate. And I bought some training tapes. I bought Carlton Sheets. I bought Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I listened to those while I was driving around Los Angeles. The next thing I knew, I bought a Fixer Upper. And then I bought a Teardown. And then I bought a Vacant Lot. And then I started building. And I remember, like, when I was building my third house.
Mm-hmm.
So I had built the Teardown. Then I built the Vacant Lot. Oh, it's my fourth house. Then I bought two lots across from each other. I built the downslope and I was building the upslope across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how the backyard was going to look. I had the plans. It was there on the plans, but I didn't understand how we were going to do it. And I just thought to myself, well, I don't know how it's going to be, but I'm sure it's going to show up. I'm sure I'm going to figure out how it's going to be. And boom, that's when I really began to trust myself, because here I was playing with hundreds of thousands of dollars, building houses,
Right.
not knowing how I was going to do it, but doing it anyway, because I had already built up some new trust in my ability to be successful.
Yeah. That's a big shift from giving up to trusting yourself again. I mean, that sounds like that process was really impactful and important for you to go through. And I'm curious about the creativity that goes into trusting yourself again.
I tell you, I've said it before, and people looked at me like I was crazy when I was on my men's self-help team, and wisdom of the men comes from my work with men's self-help teams. And I was just a man on the team at that point, and I had just finished building the Teardown. That was my first construction of a house. And I said, men, I just finished building my house. Every man should build his own house. It is the most incredible learning experience. You got to figure so much stuff out, and you will learn so much. And I really think every man should build his own house. And everyone was looking at me like I'm insane. Build our own house? What are you talking about? Yeah. I can't even. One guy, he was trying to make his payday loan. I remember he said, man, I got $2,300 in payday loans and they're eating me up alive and I don't know how to pay them off. How's he going to build a house? Well, it's a process and you got to go through it. And the more you do, the more you get good at doing stuff. And the more money you spend, the more you're going to trust yourself to spend more money when you do well.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to try, and hopefully you got to be smart about what you're going to do and get some small wins and start getting some wind under your sails and trying to make it. That's nice. I mean, if I could build myself back up after 13 years of getting told, you suck, you're terrible, your writing is horrible, you're never going to make it, you're dreaming, you're too old, you're not good looking enough.
All the things.
All the things.
Well, seeing that you have, it sounds like, reinvented yourself multiple times and come back to writing, I'm really curious what your earliest memory of being creative is.
Back in the early, when I was in like second grade, so that would be 1972.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. Somewhere in there.
Sure.
Yeah, it had to be in the 70s. There was the ozone crisis. Do you remember that?
I do not remember the ozone. I mean, I'm a product of the 80s, so we
Okay.
still had it, but maybe
There
not
was a
as
hole
much.
in the ozone. It was the
Mm,
ozone crisis. And
yes.
I went to this little school called the United Nations International School, where,
Mhm.
in New York City. And my classmates and I heard about this ozone crisis, and we made all of these signs. Said, stop using aerosol cans. And like we drew aerosol cans and put a slash through it. And we were going to distribute them all because these kids were from all over the world,
Yeah.
children of diplomats. And we were going to distribute these signs all over the world. I don't know whatever happened to those signs, but I do remember drawing them and making them. Then in about fifth grade, we had a substitute teacher. And I don't remember what her name was, but I remember my friend Mike Beanstalk and I made a comic about her called Super Bitch, because she was such a super bitch. And we drew comics about Super Bitch.
I love it. I love these stories of early memories of being creative and how completely random they can be and surprising. And yet, is that when you first started writing a comic about
I
Super
really think
Bitch?
so. I
Yeah,
really think that was my first writing, is writing the comic about Super Bitch. Yep.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I wonder too, in the second grade poster, ozone, no aerosol posters, if you brought any of that, being a second grader and being really invested and finding things that are important and wanting to share that with the world. It sounds like you have carried that into your adult life as well.
Wanting to change the world. See, the more screwed up you are, the more chance you have to make an impact on the world. I really believe that. See, after I graduated from college, I went home to get the attaboys for my family, my parents. And instead of hugs and kisses and pats on the back, they broke out into the biggest argument of all time. And they were always arguing when I was growing up, but this one was unbelievable. My dad storms out of the house, slams the door behind him, and I'm sitting on the couch in the living room, and I say to my mom, Mom, the way he resents you all these years, have you been cheating on Dad? And I'm thinking, wow, where did that question come from? I never thought that question before in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what kind of rude son of a gun asks his own mom a question like that? That's probably the rudest thing I've ever said to anyone in my entire life. And then I'm thinking, why ain't you answering the question?
Yeah.
Then she goes, he's not your real father. Your real father was a doctor at the fertility clinic we went to for 6 years trying to have you, and you look just like that guy. I said, what, Mama?
Wow.
And that's what was driving me my whole life, because on some subconscious level, I had to know. I mean, I always felt like I didn't really fit in with my dad's side of the family. They always felt like strange to me.
Yeah.
And so, here I was, a little kid, second grade, trying to change the world. And then, I had an offer from the investment bank on the 87th floor of number 1 World Trade Center. And, I had worked for them as a junior, and I had this idea that I wanted to make these smart cards and I was going to get rid of cash, and everybody was going to have smart cards through this bank.
Yeah.
And the vice president, sent me a note. Are you still planning on changing the world? Right here, I've always had this inner drive to try to make a big difference or to be somebody special. And I think it's because I've been trying to be seen by a man who I've never met and never will meet.
Yeah.
Because I looked for him 3 times, and I'm a persistent person, as you can tell.
Sounds like it, yes.
Right? And never was able to find this person. And so that unquenchable thirst to be seen by my real father has been driving me. I only wish I had been more screwed up somehow. I wish I hadn't been so successful as a student and, been the star of the plays and, gotten into the college of my dreams on early decision and all my fraternity was my first choice fraternity. I wish I hadn't been so successful, because maybe then I've been more screwed up and I could really have been successful as a writer. See?
And yet it sounds like you're awfully successful as a writer, but you want to be more successful had you been more screwed up.
In 8th grade,
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. was the star of the musical Hair, produced by my junior high school, 104 in New York City. And I was the star of West Side Story. I was Tony in West Side Story.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 9th grade, Jonathan Cryer, who also went to our junior high school, he was in 2.5 Men with Charlie Sheen for all these years. He played Conrad in Bye Bye Birdie in the junior high school production in 9th grade. I had already gone on to Stuyvesant High School, but in 10th grade, I played Conrad Birdie in the Stuyvesant High School production of Bye Bye Birdie. When you evaluate my level of success and you compare it to these two guys who were exactly the same as me at that point in our lives, it's easy to see why I don't feel like I've had quite the rocket ride that others have had who came from similar circumstance.
Yeah.
And, I only pray that that wisdom of the men can do it, because I don't know what I could possibly do more than wisdom of the men. I mean, I put my whole life in that book.
Yeah.
It's about all the international superstars that I've met: Dr. Oz, Mike Tyson, Mick Jagger, Ringo Starr, 5 presidents of the United States, the stories of how I met these people and what I learned either from them directly or in the process of meeting them. I mean, if that's not the most freshest, most deepest, most coolest book anyone's ever written and are worthy of the Pulitzer Prize, I don't know what is, but I don't know how I'm going to write anything better.
Yeah. Well, you'll just have to wait for creative inspiration, right? See what happens.
I'm going to have to switch to writing novels, and that's a whole nother thing. And I don't even know how to do that. Yeah, I don't know how to make money off that. See, that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like in your life, there's so many things going on. You've got a lot of different things that you've done, different people that you've met, but in more of your everyday, day-to-day world, what are some everyday issues that you've had to use creativity to solve?
A lot of the work I do is helping other authors, speakers, coaches, experts, and consultants and advisors to have more impact, influence, and income.
Yeah.
And I do this using what I call celebrity entrepreneurship. And a lot of the celebrity entrepreneurship work that I do is to create events. I have the people come to the event, and then they get pictures with major celebrities, or I teach them how to book themselves on TV news and talk shows, and bring in my friends who are TV producers, and my clients book themselves on TV news and talk shows guaranteed, or they get their money back. That's a seminar called Celebrity Launchpad. And I've had to really be creative in order to be able to continue having these events, because I had a big event scheduled with Dr. Oz, Dr. Drew, Evander Holyfield, the Surgeon General of the United States, a NASA astronaut, Patch Adams. It was originally supposed to be at the Harvard Faculty Club. They canceled it. Then we moved it to the New York Academy of Medicine. New York City shut down all venues because of the health crisis. But while we were here in Acapulco, I came up with the idea of moving the event to CNN Center in Atlanta, where we had done 20 celebrity launch pads over the years. We knew the venue very, very intimately. We knew what it was capable of, where we could do the event. We knew what the menu was. We knew the people. It made a lot of sense, but to shift that whole event from Harvard Club of Boston to New York Academy of Medicine and then to CNN Center in Atlanta, that was requiring a lot of creative. And this whole, the whole time that we live in is forcing us to be more creative. Ultimately, we have bought a very large villa here in Acapulco, 8 bedrooms, sleep 16, so that we can host our own events here. And now we've done, I don't know how many events have we done. How many events have we done down here, Allie? At least 12, maybe 14 events, more.
Yeah. Wow.
More. We've had a lot of people have come here to stay with us in the villa. Like I try to make my offers irresistible. So for the same investment that you would pay to come to Celebrity Launchpad in Las Vegas, and I'm doing Celebrity Launchpad number 52. It's the 52nd Celebrity Launchpad. It's going to be in Vegas, June 4, 5, 6, 7. June 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. June 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know when it's going to be. The first weekend of June 2022 is going to be in Vegas at the Aria. And for what you would invest to go to that event, and a lot of people prefer not to travel out of the United States right now.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's a great time to travel, Yeah,
it sounds like your creative solutions and I'm developing ways to do that. For sure. Yeah.
For the same $10,000 that you're going to buy a ticket to go to that event where you have to pay your own hotel. Instead, you come to our villa, our luxury villa in the most secure, highest level luxury resort part of Mexico, and stay at the 5-star resort. All meals are included for the same price as going to Las Vegas for 4 days. So it's working out pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. And creative solutions. I think that when we recognize that we're able to come up with creative solutions, that's where more creativity then continues to generate from.
You're right. And the more successful I am, the more I have creative solutions to stuff. And the more I open myself up to possibilities, and I say, well, let's try this, let's try that. And you know what I really think it is an understanding that you have to understand that a lot of times you have to do stuff over and over and over and over until you get it right. You may fail, quote unquote, or it may need to be redone over and over in order for you to finally get it right. And real estate has taught me a lot about that. It really has. Real estate been very, very good to me. To quote that guy from Saturday Night Live. I remember my dad and my mom put down these white and blue tiles in the kitchen, and one of them, I don't know, somebody dropped a pan, or I don't know what happened, it cracked. And my dad was so upset. He was an accountant. He didn't know anything about home improvement, home repair. I apologize if the wind is making noise, but I'm here in Acapulco, it's windy. And I remember he was looking at the cracked tile in the kitchen, and he was like so crestfallen. He's like, no matter what we do, it doesn't turn out right. It's just one tile,
Yeah.
And I've built all these. I know, nothing ever gets done right the first time. If I don't have to do it 3 times, if I only have to do it twice, then I feel like I'm getting ahead.
That's a win.
That's a big win.
Yeah.
And, that's part of real estate, is understanding. And I think that's part of this whole creative trust thing, is you got to trust yourself that, and this is why writing is so good, because I have re-edited the stories in my mind and through my mouth many times, having told the stories over and over the way Frank McCourt did when I was in high school. He would tell us the stories, and those are the stories that became his Pulitzer Prize winning book.
Yeah.
Then after I told the stories and recorded them, then I had them transcribed by Zoom, and then I had my editor clean them up, and then I edited them again to make sure everything was the way I wanted it. And then here's the next part. Then I read the entire book to my wife out loud. And then I checked into a hotel in Las Vegas for 3 days, and I created the audio book for Audible.
Nice.
And that Audible book reading, the performance of the Audible book, was my final edit, because I was making corrections and changes. If there was anything that needed to be fixed, I fixed it while I was reading it out loud. And then I published the book.
Nice. Yeah, the process, getting your eyes on it over and over and over allows you to make adjustments or be surprised by something that you didn't remember, or change it in a new way.
And after all these decades of being a writer and a speaker and a performer I trust that I'm going to do my best. Like my wife
Yeah.
always says, I'm doing the best I can. I do the best I can. And that's it. Then that's all I can do. I have to trust that that's going to be good enough.
Yeah. For someone who may not feel that they're creative or successful, how would you encourage others to find creativity in their life?
Get a notebook.
Mm-hmm.
Get a notebook and a pen or some colored pencils, and allow yourself to write words or draw pictures, and indulge yourself. Like when I write notes, I have lots of notebooks, and I tell my students all the time, write one idea per page.
Mm-hmm.
You have a big notebook. If you have an idea, write it big on the page. Get used to indulging your own ideas
Mm-hmm.
and giving honor to your own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Because, man, you will be surprised. You really will be surprised. If you have an idea that inspires you, then trust yourself enough to create something out of that idea.
Yeah.
And the book, creating a book is a great thing to create because it has value. A book is a very valuable thing, or can be a very valuable thing.
Mm-hmm.
A song can be a valuable thing. Yeah. And for those who are just beginning or struggling to be creative, you must understand, this is so important. You must suck if you are ever going to be great. You've got to be willing to suck. And that's so important. It really is. I mean, evidently I sucked for 13 years in Hollywood. That's what everyone told me. So I gotta believe that's what everyone told me. It must have been true.
Nice. I like that. It's good encouragement that it's okay to suck, and it's okay to not be the best at something when you're just starting, to keep practicing and coming back to it.
That's the whole thing, is everybody thinks everyone's, an overnight success. No one's an overnight success. And writers there's no natural born writers, and there's no natural born speakers.
Mm-hmm.
I am in the top 1% of money earners in the National Speakers Association. I have been for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, I am not a natural born speaker. I'm a person who has to pay for all my own stuff. Nobody's paying for me. And if I'm going to be able to pay for stuff, I've got to get out of my comfort zone and do stuff that I'm uncomfortable doing. When I was on the Today Show, Brooke Shields interviewed me. She said, you talk a lot about being uncomfortable outside of your comfort zone. And I said, that's right, because life begins where your comfort zone ends. And she said, that sounds scary. And I said, when it's scary is when it's great. And that's what I love about going on TV. I had never said those things before, but those came out of my real deep knowing. And here we were in Acapulco 2 years ago. And when we moved out of the hotel, we came to Acapulco to take a vacation for the 2 weeks to slow the spread. I said, let's go to Acapulco and stay at our favorite resort. 10 days in, luckily, I rented our first villa because they closed the hotel. They closed all the hotels in Mexico. And if we hadn't already been in a villa, we would have been out of luck.
Right.
And but when we were about to move out of the hotel into the villa, I have very few times in my life been more scared than I was that night before. If I could have canceled it and got my money back, I would have, but I couldn't. I looked into buying a gun. I didn't know if I would be safe living in a private house that didn't have a front door. You just walk into the outdoor living room. But it turned out to be one of the greatest life transformations in our entire lives. Now we, spend most of our time in Mexico and love it.
Yeah. What you were saying about being uncomfortable or the edge of your comfort zone, creativity comes alive at the edge of your comfort zone when you're stretched, when you're not in that familiar space. You have more opportunity to really flex creativity as well.
And also, when I go to seminars, very often I go to a seminar by myself because I don't want to have anybody's expectations or preconceptions about who I am and how I need to be.
Sure.
Influencing my experience of the seminar. I just want to go in and take in whatever I can find. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to be so creative and reinvent our lives in Mexico, because we don't know anybody in Mexico. We don't care about anything. It's just us. And we are doing the best we can with given the resources that we have and the circumstances we're living in. And we just, are going through the process, and here we are. That's it.
I love it.
That's it.
Nice. Well, it's been such a treat to chat with you. I just have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
When I was writing Wisdom of the Men, I was very solid and deep in my knowing and in my power. I was just speaking from my power. And I would say that's the best way to be creative. And the only reason I could do that is because I'd put in decades of paying my dues to get to the point where I had the skills and the stories and the material all worked out and reworked. I had paid so much dues as a writer and as a speaker and a performer and as a celebrity, because essentially Wisdom of the Men is about me and my interactions with major celebrities, which all comes out of being a celebrity entrepreneur, which is what I am and what I do and what I sell. And if I had not been able to have that total power as a man and as an artist, I would not have been able to have the authority that I had when I was creating my life's work masterpiece, Wisdom of the Men. So that was the greatest creative experience of my life. I felt blessed every single day because I treated myself so well. I knew, checking into the top luxury hotel in Venice and staying there for free on points, and having the money to go into any restaurant that I want or do anything I wanted. Going to the opera, we went to see a beautiful, incredible opera. We saw Faust while we were there, and that's a great opera. I mean, they have a sword fight in the middle of it, and the guy dies. He's got all blood all over him. There's a live sex scene in the opera. They have some hot chick in diaphanous robes, and the guy's having sex with her on the stage in the opera. I mean, wow, that was really good. And I treated myself to that experience as part of my whole process of writing Wisdom of the Men, because I knew I needed I needed the food, I needed the sparkling water, I needed the architecture, I needed everything contributing to my being the most alive that I could be and the most grounded that I could possibly be in my life. And that's what it was like for me to be creative in my best moments.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of the stories and tips and tools and your own creative life and creative experience. If people want to learn more about the things that you're doing, how could they go about doing that?
First, you can get the book on Amazon, right? Wisdom of the Men.
All right.
By Clint Arthur. You got to put in Clint Arthur because for some reason, Amazon won't just bring that up. But if you want to find out more about me and seminars that I do, writing workshops, storytelling workshops, celebrity entrepreneurship, celebrity launchpad, all of that stuff, go to clint.com, CLINTTT.com. Why Clint with 3 T's, Clint? Because one of my clients is a name scientist. And she said to me one time, I wish you could add another T to the end of Clint because the T's always come out on top. And I said, well, let me look into it. And I couldn't get Clint with 2 T's.com, but I could get Clint with 3 T's.com. And therefore, I have 3 times as much chance to come out on top. And it seems to be working out pretty good.
I love it. Well, I will put all of that in show notes so people have easy access. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It's been such a treat. Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.